My question to you is this: who created the universe? Did the Father create the universe? Did the Son create the universe? Or did the Holy Spirit create the universe? Who is responsible for the creation of the universe? Now, in your model, you cannot actually say that the Father created the universe in a full sense. If you do say that, then you can't say that the Son created the universe in a full sense. And if you say that, you can't say the Holy Spirit, because you can't have two subjects operating on one object and creating it and being responsible for it in a full sense. I can't go to the gym and pump 100 kilograms by myself, as well as my friend over here, or William Lane Craig, doing the same thing. It can be shared, but then if it's shared, then you've got 1/3 God. So can you clarify? Do you believe that the Father is 1/3 responsible for the creation of the universe? Or do you believe in the logical contradiction that you have two subjects that are fully responsible for the creation of the universe? Which one do you believe?
I gave you an extra 20 seconds for the interruption, but Dr. Craig, it's now your turn, 2 minutes.
Causal overdetermination is not incoherent, Mr. Hijab. Imagine a candle being lit by two simultaneous matches, each of which is sufficient to illuminate the candle. In the case of the Trinity, the classical Christian doctrine is in Latin, opera ad extra sunt indivisa, that the operations of the Trinity toward the external world are undivided and therefore undertaken by all three persons at once. Now, I don't agree with that doctrine in every case. I think that leads to real problems. But I think that is very plausible with respect to the doctrine of creation, that the three persons act in concert with each other to create the world. So they're all responsible for the creation. And in the New Testament, creation is ascribed both to the Father and to the Son.
Do you think there's anything valid in the point that Hijab is making there again about how you can't be partly responsible, or you either have to be partly responsible or fully responsible?
To be completely honest with you, I don't even care. Like, it's such an abstract debate, at least these points are, that and I'm just being candid here, they've lost my interest because of how the conversation is going as well. But the question that I do want to ask, to William, he says that each is sufficient, each is capable of creating the entire world. Then why the redundancy? So I'm just trying to understand what's the wisdom behind it. What's the point behind it? Or is it just what it is? And now we're trying to make sense of it. So that's the question that I wish Hijab would really push back with. Mm-hmm. And I also noticed how he was quickly like flexing how much he can lift at the gym.
Yeah.
In this weird analogy.
Yeah, Bike Pap also knows that. Okay, bro, we didn't ask about your gym. Shit. To me, if I was to summarize so far William Lane Craig's position, it really feels like he's saying, well, God is actually one thing, and he's doing all this with one will, so on and so forth. But he's also these three things. Mm-hmm. And trying to do both simultaneously. Yeah. And again, I can't help feel that it's because they're saddled with needing to also believe that Jesus is God and the Son of God.
Yeah, I don't think William is doing a great job at explaining why any of this is necessary. So he's just saying that it makes sense because it does, and yes, I don't see a problem with it, but he's not doing a good job of explaining why it's necessary at all. So I guess I somewhat agree with Hijab on that one, but like I said, I find it very unenjoyable of an experience to listen to him talk about it.
I'm sorry to say, you have not answered the question. The question is, can you have two subjects that are fully responsible, to a degree of 100%, fully responsible for the creation of one thing in its entirety? For example, can you have two mothers that are fully responsible for the production of one child? Fully responsible. I think even the transgender movement would raise their eyebrow to this. The LGBT, they will say, no, Dr. Craig has lost it. Sorry to say. No one can say this. Can there be two authors that are fully responsible for the writing of one book? Once again, when you talk about, you don't want to say this because I know it's heresy. It's heresy to say that the Father is not the creator of the universe to 100%. But that's what you have to say to avoid contradiction. So why don't you say that? Why don't you say that the Father is not the creator? He is a partial creator. He is a 1/3 creator. He's a 33% creator. The Father is not fully responsible for the creation of the universe. Is that correct?
I don't think you understand causal overdetermination, Mr. Hijab. When two matches light a flame simultaneously or light a candle, they don't each contribute 50% to the lighting of the candle. They are each 100% sufficient for the effect, but they act concurrently with each other. And so in the act of creation, I see absolutely no problem with saying that there is a concurrence here of the action of the three persons of the Trinity to produce this creative effect.
Okay, so to respond to this very clearly, your candle example with overdetermination, causal overdetermination, it's analogous to what we are talking about. Why? If you have two candles that come together to light a flame, you will have a bigger flame, you see. There's sufficient condition, there's sufficient, you've written this in your book on logic. You have a fantastic book, and I recommend it to the people for children on logic, the difference between necessary and sufficient conditions. What is required for the lighting of a candle, what is a necessary condition for the lighting of a candle, is not achieved with the lighting of two candles. What is required for the creation of the universe is not achieved with the creation with two creators creating the same universe. So I'm saying it's disanalogous because we're talking about the flame, and the flame here is a product of the two lights that you've talked about, which is a bigger flame. I'm saying now each atom, each quark, each whatever it is in the universe, proton, electron, how is it conceivable, possible, intelligible that there can be two subjects that are fully responsible for each of those things to a degree of 100%? How is it possible that I can go to the gym and pump 100 kilos and somebody else can pump the same 100 kilos? How is it possible that a mother can give birth to a child to a degree of 100% and that another mother is responsible for to the same degree for the production of the same child?
Oh, if only Aladdin was here to see Mohammed Hijab make another weightlifting weightlifting example. I love how he also does like a little bit of a physical demonstration too. That's the point where I think we're really stuck here. I think we've hit a dead end with this stuff because I can see it from both perspectives. So from William Lane Craig's perspective, and the way he brings up the candle analogy, he just sees them as one thing emanating from one source working together perfectly. And I think the point that Hijab is making, and it's something that Craig just can't address because he's stuck to that position of is that the three is one, is that there's some instances of creation where you can't say that there's like different elements but they're all 100% responsible for it. So I think in this sense, it's actually a point where logic fails. So logic fails because you have to just accept William Lane Craig's position and disregard the logic of it because you're talking about the essence of this tri-person God.
I said the analogies which are analogous are, for example, how is it possible, I asked, for there to be a mother who gives birth to a child and that she is responsible for that production 100%, and then to be another mother for 100% responsibility? Why don't you admit that on your model, you have to say the father is not fully, wholly, completely responsible for the creation of the universe. He has to only be partially responsible. Why can't you admit that?
I don't admit it because your analogies are inept, like two women giving birth to the same child. In a case like that, you're absolutely right. You cannot have overlapping causes or causal overdetermination. But that doesn't imply that there are not other cases, such as the illustration I used to show that there can be cases of causal overdetermination where three agents work together to bring about a single effect. Now, every physical illustration is going to involve points of disanalogy when you're talking about spiritual entities. So the fact that maybe the flame would be bigger if it's lit by two matches instead of one match, that's just irrelevant to the question of whether or not you can have two causes currently acting to produce a single effect. So I'm just not persuaded at all by your objection.
There we have it. That's where the dead end is, right there. Like you can all watch and see that there's repetition happening right now in what they're saying. You can't do anything about it. It's a deadlock, bicap, yes, an impasse, yeah, a complete dead end here.
With the greatest of respect, but it's not for me to be it's not for you to be persuaded with what I'm saying. It's really for us to be persuaded with what you're saying, because frankly, even Christian co-religionists of yours I'm not accepting what you're saying. Scott Williams, who wrote a peer-reviewed paper, and he was asking the fundamental question about necessary agreement. And he gave an example, which maybe we can move to, because I don't agree with anything you just said there. I mean, you talked about the flame, the two matches coming to create a bigger flame, but that is clearly a different product. The two matches are different to the flame. There is not a single analogy that you can bring which match the analogies that I've brought forward, which show the fundamental point, which, by the way, many of the Islamic thinkers and like Ibn Rushd and Al-Razi and others spoke about this at length, which is that you cannot have two subjects that are responsible fully for the same thing to a degree of 100%, but the public will judge. The public will judge who is right and who is wrong on this, and maybe even your Christian brethren will judge. But at this point, you have not convinced anybody. If the father wanted to do something, let's say, for example, he wanted to take life away from William Lane Craig, and the son wanted to keep life in William Lane Craig, Is it possible that that can both happen at the same time? No, it cannot happen. Is it possible that both of them won't happen? No, because that will contradict the law of excluded middle. The first one contradicts the law of non-contradiction. The second one contradicts the law of excluded middle. Is it possible that William Lane Craig can have life in his body without any reason? No, because that contradicts the PSR, the principle of sufficient reason. Now, the question is this. Is the Father capable of supervening on the will of the Son? Is the Son capable of supervening on the will of the Father? Is the Father capable of creating the universe all by himself?
All right, that's time.
Without any involvement from the Son?
Oh,
Interesting questions from Hijab, but if he was listening to William Lane Craig, he already gave him the answer, as much as it's not a satisfying answer. And that's, well, they're perfect. And so they're going to be concurrent and agreeing all the time. So that wouldn't happen in the first place, which again brings the redundancy question that Apostate Aladdin brought up earlier.
well, those are two different questions. Certainly, the Father would be capable of creating the universe by himself if he wanted to, and the Son wanted to. What I'm arguing simply is that there is no disagreement among the three persons of the Trinity, nor is there any reason to think that this is impossible or incoherent. And in fact, the position that I'm articulating here is the standard Christian position. Opera ad extra sunt indivisa. The operations of the Trinity toward the external world are undivided. It's only the opera ad intra, the intra-Trinitarian relations, that are traditionally differentiated from each other. So the position I'm taking, whether it's right or wrong, is the mainstream Christian view. It's not a peculiarity of William Lane Craig's theology.
Sorry. The position that you take on partialism is absolutely not the mainstream view.
That's
I mean, it's seen as a heresy almost across the board. It's seen as a heresy across the board with Protestants and Catholics and Eastern Orthodox to say that the persons are parts of God in the way that you've said. But put that to the side, no problem. My point is this. Let's go back to the thing that you've said. You said it's possible for the Father is capable of creating the universe by himself. Okay, let's take that for a second. If the Father is capable of creating the universe by himself, but he does not create it by himself, but according to you, creates it in concert with the Son and the Holy Spirit. These are your words, not mine. In concert, these are the words you use. Yes? That the Father is capable, but no, he does it in concert with the will of the Holy Spirit, the Son and the Holy Spirit. That means to say that the addition of the Son and the Holy Spirit have had an inhibiting impact on the will of the Father. That means to say that the Father is being inhibited by the Son. And by the way, just to be clear, this is not my arguments. This is exactly the argument of the Quran.
I don't think that's an understanding what Craig is saying, as much as I don't buy what Craig is saying. What Craig is saying is that they're one and the same in that sense of having like that same working in concert perfection. So from that perspective, there is no inhibition. And again, we're going to get into quoting the Quran right now for irrelevant reasons.
إذا لذهب كل إله بما خلق ولا على بعضهم على بعض. In chapter 23, verse number 91, that Allah has not taken a son, nor does he have any creator with him. If that was the case, they would have taken each part of what they have created and they would have tried to outstrip one another in power. The reason why you are not able to answer this question is because it comes from the highest source. We believe it comes from God. This argument is a godly argument. And this is why necessary agreement on your model there is no real way to prove it. You ask, what is incoherent about your model? What is incoherent about your model is that when you look at it and you look at each person of the Trinity and you look at the Father, what he's capable of doing by himself versus what he's capable of doing with the Son and the Holy Spirit, you realize that he's capable of doing less because of the Son and the Holy Spirit. And if he's capable of doing less because of the Son and the Holy Spirit, that means to say that the Son and the Holy Spirit are having an inhibiting impact, which is not all powerful then. The Father has been stripped from his omnipotence because of the Son and the Holy Spirit. There's no possible way that you can have a part of God which is both omnipotent in the full sense and in the partial sense at the same time, because a part is by definition smaller than the whole. Wouldn't you agree with that?